Well, the ongoing struggle between socialism and capitalism rearing its ugly head again last night at the State of the Union, President Trump making a dramatic vow.
America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free. Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
In response, self-described Democratic socialist Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez told Fox News after the speech, quote, "I thought it was great. I think he's scared. And some say Trump should be scared." Now, according to a recent Fox News poll, 57% of Democrats say they actually hold a positive view of socialism, and 40% say it would be a good thing for the United States to move away from capitalism. Meanwhile, large corporations only feeding the movement by laying off workers while they rake in big bucks and buy back their own stocks and take advantage of those tax windfalls. For more, let's bring in our panel. President of the Kaltbaum Capital Management, Gary Kaltbaum, Chairman of the Civic Forum PAC, Ford O'Connell, American University Executive and Resident, Caprica Faro. Mattie Duppler is back with us as well. And Gary, let me start with you. Another reason I always say that President Trump and all Americans should be scared is because of the millions of people who've died in the wake of countries embracing socialism. But here at home, some are saying this morning, General Motors had an earnings report. They made $3 billion in North America. They made zero internationally. But when it's time to fire people, they fire the same people that are driving their profits. And regular Americans who don't consider themselves socialists think that's wrong.
Look, corporations should be allowed to do what they think is in their best interest. This is the way it's been for a long time. People are going to get hired. People are going to get fired. You know, their favorite boogeyman is the Walmart that has 2.3 million employees, $500 billion in sales, lowered inflation rate by themselves, and 75% of their managers came from minimum wage doing everything right, yet they get ripped upon. Look, the problem with these socialists is it really is a con. In order for socialism to breathe, they have to get the money from capitalism. And when capitalism is all gone, you end up as Venezuela. I am so happy the president was loud and clear about it, because this is going to be a fight going into the election. It is going to be a fight, Capri, and I think there are some folks, even within your party, who are trying to push back. Not and silently behind the scenes. No one's coming straight out and saying this, but all of so far, most of the announced candidates, the declared candidates, clearly on this sort of idea of redistribution, serious redistribution.
Look, I mean, I think that, when you're dealing in a primary process in particular, candidates tend to go either further to the left or further to the right in order to appeal to that base. And what we've seen over the last few years is that there has been this growth in attraction after Bernie Sanders' presidential bid to this concept of socialism or democratic socialism. Now, I think that there may be some conflating between maybe economic fairness, affordability issues, fair trade, and the concept of socialism. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not trying to disparage people and say that they don't know what they're talking about. But I think this, I mean, you mentioned the issue that people are getting frustrated with seeing major multinational corporations making big bucks and laying people off. And that has happened in my community. The General Motors plant there is going to be closing, laying off 1,600 people in March 1st. And so those people there, they're not looking for a socialism, response. They are looking, and they're not looking for a redistribution of wealth, but I do think they are looking to the federal government to step in and be an advocate, whether it's for fair trade, whether it is to come in and talk to General Motors and figure out a way to replace their product there.
And Ford, and I think what makes it even more intriguing is the fact that corporations have benefited mightily from these tax cuts. I think we'll have 3 quarters in a row where U.S. corporations have banked over $2 trillion in profits. And people see this, and they are wondering if it's skewed, if it's unfair. And what's the Republican response?
Well, here's the deal. I do think that corporations don't understand that they're biting the hand that feeds them. But I do think, and yes, Americans should be petrified of socialism, but I think that this could be a great 2020 contrasting issue for President Trump if he can capitalize on it, because it allows him to solidify the GOP base and make inroads with key independents. 61% of independents don't like socialism. Trump was not mincing his words last night. But what he has to worry about is young voters who believe about the freebies and essentially the fantastical grand promises. taxes. Yes, I agree with Gary that it's a con, but Trump has to go out and prove that.
You know, Mattie, the article today, this morning in Bloomberg, U.S. banks win $21 billion in Trump's tax windfall. Then they cut their staff and loan less. The average person sitting around, even someone doing pretty good, like, you know, hey, I'm doing good. I'm in construction. I got a job. I'm making 120 grand a year. It's the most I've ever made. But they see this and they say, golly, this is what I don't want. This is why I went for Bernie last time. This is why I went for President Trump last time. But maybe they may go even further and say maybe the idea of socialism is intriguing after all.
Charles, here is the big difference between capitalism and socialism. In socialism, you have a fixed amount of means in order to fix that problem. In capitalism, the solutions are endless because you can regenerate wealth based on a number of different ways. This is the story that has gone untold, and this is why when we talked about earlier in the hour, it's important for the president to continue to tell the story about what free enterprise has done, not just for the United States, but look worldwide. We right now are living at a time where we've got the fewest amount of people living in extreme poverty than in any other time in human history. That is a story of success, and that is not the story that's being told. We need to be careful when we talk about the fact that there are places in this economy in the United States where the economy certainly needs to be doing better. But that doesn't mean that that when other places in the economy do well, they do so at the expense of the workers writ large. I think that that is really the message that's getting lost here, and the president needs to push back on that.
Mattie, here's the deal. I think we all agree on this. But if I'm a Democrat up there in 2020 and I start talking about free college, free health care, and free puppies, how is that not alluring to a lot of voters out there? And that's what President Trump has to make sure he cuts off. If he wins this debate about capitalism versus socialism, he will be reelected President of the United States.
You tell him that nothing is free, and you tell him what they're trying to do, and they're not even
and when
being
they
shy
have
about
nothing,
it.
Gary, guess what? They're going to pop
Once
back.
people learn more about the policies and the underlying ways in which things like this actually try to get achieved. There was a Kaiser Family Foundation poll that was out about this Medicare for All, for example, which is, you know, tied into some of these other policy issues. Once people figured out that they would have to get higher taxes and some of these other things, they were a little bit more hesitaint.
You know,
And that's the thing. We've got
though, guys.
20
I mean,
people running for
often
president.
don't figure it out until after they tried, right? If anyone goes back and studies Africa, as they were getting their independence, those countries in Africa, and choosing socialism, it set them back at least 50 to 100 years, but at that time, it looked attractive to what they were seeing. Real quick, Gary, on Monday, Ultimate Software got a takeover bid, $11 billion. They have 1,650 employees. Every single one of them got stock for working there. All of them be instant millionaires. Do we need to hear more stories like that to get people more intrigued about the idea that there are ways to benefit, not just from the stock market, but from capitalism?
Yeah, doesn't capitalism suck, all those millionaires now? Look, here's the problem. Socialism and socialists, all they talk about is what's wrong. But when I can sit here and talk for 3 hours about GM and what's right, about how many employees they have, how many millionaires made out, what kind of great cars they make, I can go on and on and on. The accentuation of the positive, what needs to be done, and there's blatant evidence of failure of socialism just 2,700 miles south of my feet right
I'm sure
now,
you can go on,
down
Gary,
in
but the
Venezuela.
producer's rapping at me. Tell Gary to be quiet. We got to rap. Gary, Ford, Capri, Mattie, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Charles.
All right, folks. Well, mixed bag of earnings today, and it's got this rally on pause, but we had a giant move so far, right out of the gate this year. Now it's becoming a problem for Wall Street. I'm going to tell you why. It's time for analysts to perhaps sharpen their pencils and look ahead. We'll be right back.
It's every municipal bond investor's dream. A bright, shining city on a hill where there won't be any